Some of the most fun I have had in Genshin Impact was the launch of 3.0, when I finally got my hands on Dendro Traveler and could experiment with all the new Dendro reactions. The introduction of Dendro saw 3 new reactions: Burning, Quicken and Bloom, and two of these three reactions changed how I viewed the game. Literally overnight, Raiden Shogun became the best off-field Electro applicator, Toma became an AoE damage dealer, and Razor became an unholy abomination. The meta got turned on its head and so many new possibilities opened up, and all of this from them just adding 3 new reactions. And so you can imagine my excitement when I heard about Lunar reactions. It started off pretty strong with Lunar Charge, since it fundamentally changes how the reaction deals damage and how that damage is calculated. Much like how Dendro changed the way I thought about team building thanks to its multi-stage reactions, Lunar Charge changed the way I think about team building since it can crit, and multiple characters can contribute to the final damage number. With normal Electro Charge teams, trying to build for big Electro Charge damage numbers was difficult, since you needed to have your Electro Charge trigger be built with maximum elemental mastery, instead of crit for talent damage. But because it was difficult to guarantee a certain character would trigger Electro Charge, it was really hard to justify building Elemental Mastery on anyone. Electro Charge was there because it had a lot of good utility, and you happened to have Electro and Hydro characters, not for the damage it was dealing. Lunar Charge scaling with both EM and crit meant that I could take my really old top 1% Ayato and build a team around maximising their talent damage and their Lunar Charge damage. It meant that EM scaling Electro carries like Sethos have a fun new team to try that doesn't require Dendro. Even small things like how Lunar Charge ticks slower means that you have some new overvape options for characters like Arlecchino and our true Pyro Archon Zhangling. So if Lunar Charge can change the way we think about Electro Charge as a reaction, surely the other Lunar reaction, Lunar Bloom, would do something similar, right? Reactions are universal. They're a system that all characters can interact with and frame how we think about those characters. We think about Hu Tao as doing big damage thanks in part because she's Pyro and can vaporize and melt her damage. If she was Dendro instead, we wouldn't think about her doing big damage numbers, but just think about how fast her Pyro application, her Dendro application was, to try and get as many spreads as possible. Reactions also create a universal baseline that all characters of an element are capable of. If nothing else, at least you can apply your element, which, depending on what element you have, can matter quite a lot. Modifying a reaction can change how characters interact with it. Base Electro Charge, for example, generally requires fast elemental application, since it ticks every second. Lunar Charge ticking every 2 seconds instead means that fast application isn't required. And if you want, you can just choose a character with slower application, but with other kinds of utility. So what does Lunar Bloom do? Well, Lunar Bloom is the exact same as Bloom, but it also generates a stack of Verdant Dew, a shared resource for your whole team up to a max of 3 stacks. And that's it. It's just Bloom that makes a counter tick up. And these stacks, by the way, they do nothing. Lunar Bloom can't consume them, only generate them. Llama and Nefer, the characters needed to activate Lunar Bloom in the first place, can consume Verdant Dew to, well, activate their kits, but they are so far the only characters in the game that can make use of Verdant Dew in the first place. Making a reaction generate a resource is fine, that's literally what Dendro cores are. So long as there is a universal way for characters to interact with that resource, it's fine. Like, sure, Dendro cores can only be interacted with by Pyro, Electro and Anemo characters that can infuse, but the point is that all Pyro, Electro and Anemo characters that can infuse can interact with it. Like, Xinyan is designed to be a physical carry, but I can use it as a burgeon trigger if I want to. But making them a resource that only specified characters can interact with kind of defeats the purpose of it being a reaction. For all intents and purposes, there is currently no difference between Llama enabling Lunar Bloom and just having a line in Llama's kit that says, every time a party member triggers Bloom, Llama generates a stack of Verdant Dew. Like, sure, now that Nefer is in the game, there are now 2 whole entire characters that can use Verdant Dew, but that doesn't change the fact that we are dedicating an entire reaction to a specific character's kit. It's like if Lunar Charge required you to have Nuvolette, Hydro character or Siegeween in your party, and it was just Electro Charge that created source water droplets. Why are we dedicating a reaction to that? Now, I personally was extra disappointed by this implementation of Lunar Bloom because, well, I misread Llama's kit, and I thought that whenever a character did Dendro skill damage, you could consume a Verdant Dew to deal more damage based on your elemental mastery, which was probably the first time I was ever excited to play an Alhaitham Bloom team. Of course, it wasn't that, and I, like everyone else, was incredibly disappointed by what we ended up getting. Of course, the reactions themselves aren't the only way you can interact with these Lunar reactions. So far, all of the 5-star Nod-Krai characters have been able to deal Lunar reaction damage directly from their kits. Flynn's Pogo Hop, for example, can deal Lunar charge damage on its own without needing to react with Hydro. This direct reaction damage fulfills a fantasy that I find quite interesting. When I first started playing Genshin Impact, I thought it was really cool that when Keqing used her skill, because she was my first 5-star, but you could use your elemental vision and see that her weapon was directly infused with electro. It invoked a fantasy of running around with an electrified sword and, I don't know, electrocuting people. Direct Lunar damage, I think, is supposed to take this one step further. Flynn's doesn't just have electro on his polearm, he has electro and hydro, and they're reacting, which I think is incredibly cool. In game, direct Lunar damage looks like your character's making really big shiny numbers, and I mean, who doesn't love big shiny numbers? Especially when that big shiny number is my subscriber count. Please. But gameplay wise, I don't actually find Lunar reaction damage to be all that interesting. Like, don't get me wrong, big numbers are great and all, but if I want big numbers, all I need to do is summon my rat from the sky. So what makes direct Lunar damage unique enough for it to be a separate mechanic? Okay, so on the theory crafting end, yes, it's reaction damage, it does synergize with reaction buffs, it doesn't scale with damage percent, and it scales with elemental mastery and your character's level, yeah, I get that. But a lot of that is just locked behind what stats you build, and what teammates you can and can't run by virtue of just what numbers they give. It doesn't interact with the elements themselves, or even the reaction it's supposed to be. Like Flynn's little jump on his skill doesn't even apply electro. It's shiny purple physical damage. From my minimal testing, I couldn't tell if the Lunar Bloom portion of Llama's damage actually applied Dendro, but in practice, it wouldn't matter because it's just still shiny green physical damage. This is just where I think so much of the missed potential lies. Lunar reaction damage doesn't do any reactions. In at least Flynn's case, it doesn't even apply an element. Imagine if Flynn's little hop attack also applied electro and hydro for Lunar charge. Maybe there'd be incentives to run a pyro character for overvape. Maybe it'd make him a good electro on-fielder for hyper bloom, since he'd also apply hydro for more blooms. Okay, maybe that'd be a bit too OP, who knows. But imagine if direct Lunar Bloom damage did something just something as simple as generating a Dendro Core. Maybe a Dendro Core whose base damage is proportional to the initial hits damage. Maybe that would actually incentivize Llama to build crit rather than just EM main stats and leave it at that, right? These ideas aren't perfect, I'm not a game designer, but I am a player who finds the new mechanic of green and purple physical damage to be quite boring. Personally. This is only patch 6. Lunar 2, so maybe there's a chance that we get some other more interesting Lunar reactions, like, I don't know, Lunar Vape with Dorian or Lunar Freeze with Columbina, but we'll just have to wait and see, I suppose.